Hi, I'm Bob,
And I'm Sherry.
and this is Mostly Politics with Bob and Sherry.
So today we're going to have another show, just me and Bob talking, given the recent tragedy happened in Texas. I am a person coming from another country that we're not allowed to own guns. Even though I've been in America for 20 years, I still have a general fear of guns. Now, I know a lot of people, Democrat and Republican, that loves to hunt and they own guns. So we wanted to, since Bob is a very technical person, so I want to get some knowledge from him as far as the difference between guns and AR-15 and 22 cal, all these terms. And so this is going to be a quite informational, I would say informational show, just the two of us to talk about that. So here's my question to you, Bob. President Joe Biden recently said this: a 22 caliber bullet will lodge in the lung and we can probably take it out and may be able to get it and save the life. But 9 millimeter bullet blows the lung out of the body. So can you tell us a little bit about what's the caliber? Was it different in caliber? To me, a bullet is a bullet, but what body part gets blown up, I have no idea. So let's talk about that first.
Okay, let's start with caliber. But first, when you take that little clip, it sounds like he's saying a 9 millimeter bullet is too much of a gun for self protection and hunting. But if you go back earlier in the statement, he makes a statement, I know that it makes no sense to be able to purchase something that can fire up to 300 rounds. And then he says, and so there's only one reason for something that can fire, 100 rounds. And, so in full context, he kind of jumps around and it's on the spot with the reporters. It's not a prepared statement. So I'm going to assume when he was talking about, hunting and self-protection, he was including in that how much, the number of rounds as he sees it. But let's start with caliber. So the caliber of a gun is the inside diameter of the barrel or the outside diameter of the bullet. When he says 22 caliber, that's not really enough information to know, but I think we know. I think we know he was talking about a 22 long rifle. Okay, the small 22 rimfire cartridge. So the 22 would be the diameter around the diameter of the bullet, and the cartridge, that would include the bullet and the powder and things on the inside, is a 22 long rifle. So this is pretty much there's a 22 short rifle where it's a smaller cartridge still, but these are pretty much the least deadly of a bullet, if you will. Here's another 22 caliber
That's a lot
bullet.
bigger.
So, right, the cartridge, it's a 22 caliber. This is actually a 5.56 NATO 5.56 cartridge is what it's called, and it was original. It's an upgrade slightly, if you will, from the 223 Remington, and this is what an AR-15 fires.
When
So
you
it's a
say
22.
NATO 22 caliber, why did you say NATO 22 caliber?
Well, they name these rounds different things. Okay, when the military was searching for a new bullet, a new standard load, they settled on the 223 Remington, which we can talk about more later. And they designed the AR-15 around this 223 Remington. So what happens is when you ignite the powder inside the cartridge, it burns. It burns very quickly. Like, do you ever notice when you strike a match, it flames bright and then it kind of calms down? So the initial strike of the match, you get a bigger flame and then it gets smaller and just kind of burns the stick. That's a similar thing that happens with the powder in here. When it burns very quickly and it puts off a lot of gas. That gas creates pressure, and that pressure pushes the projectile, the slug, the bullet, through the gun, and that's how a gun works. So a 5.56 NATO, it's the same bullet, it's even the same physical cartridge size, but it has more powder on the inside of it. So it's designed to operate at a higher pressure.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to use the term more power, okay, it's more power, but it's energy. If you think about this in terms of physics, when a projectile's flying through the air, there's energy behind it. It has energy in it. And when it hits something, the more energy it has, the more likely it'll penetrate and,
And
whatever it does.
is this the type of bullet that used in all AR-15s?
No, this is the most common. So when you say AR-15, this is almost likely what they have. There is at least one manufacturer makes an AR-15 that fires a .22 long rifle. It'll fire this exact bullet, the one that doesn't blow the lung out.
Okay. So
There are also larger ones. There's a .45 caliber.
so AR-15. So the manufacturer designed the weapon to hold different type of bullet. Is that what you're saying here?
It was originally designed for the 223 Remington,
Okay.
but it has since been designed to handle other rounds. Like I have heard people say, because a Glock is a manufacturer of a pistol used primarily by law enforcement, and I've heard people say civilians have no reason to own a Glock. Glocks are too powerful. It's really not that. I mean, that means nothing because a Glock is just a manufacturer. That semi-automatic handgun made by Glock comes in all sorts of different, cartridges, 9mm, .45 caliber. I mean, 380 automatic. There's just a lot of different Glocks, and even within that, there's a lot of different sizes of the gun.
So essentially, it's kind of like the copy machine, right? From the '90s, we used to call them Xerox, but they're just copy machine, except Xerox is the manufacturer that manufactures the copier.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So a Glock is just a manufacturer of a gun.
So the name.
It doesn't mean any particular caliber, any particular power. I mean, a Glock is no more powerful than this Beretta. Okay.
Beretta is also a manufacturer name?
Yes.
Okay.
The gun itself is just a delivery, a piece of equipment to deliver the bullet. I mean, It fires it. The gun doesn't have any power. So that's another thing that you hear is it's too powerful of a gun. An AR-15 is too powerful. An AR-15 doesn't have any power in it. So for example, this is a 357 Magnum. It has a long barrel. Okay, the longer barrel makes it more accurate if you're going to target shoot or shoot farther range, but it's bigger to carry. Now, this here is a 357 Magnum cartridge. This is a 38 Special. They're very similar, okay? But a 357 Magnum operates at a much higher pressure. So there's a lot more powder in this cartridge than this one. So if I bought this same revolver in a 38 Special, it would physically be a smaller, less heavy gun. There would be less steel around it because the 38 Special has less pressure. So the gun is designed to, if a gun's designed to handle a 38 Special, you cannot put a 357 Magnum in it. It could potentially explode the gun because there's more pressure in this. See, when this cartridge, this brass is very thin. So when you light that powder, that cartridge could just, expand out. It relies on the chamber of the gun to hold that pressure in there while the shell comes out. So if you put a round in a gun that is too much pressure, it can cause a failure of the gun, it can cause shrapnel to fly, and it could potentially hurt or kill the person firing the gun.
Oh.
So a 357 Magnum revolver, you can put a 38 Special in it, but you can't put a 357 Magnum bullet in a 38 Special gun.
So
Does that make sense?
no, none of these
Well,
make
so you have
sense to me.
caliber, you have diameter of
I
the
understand the
bullet,
caliber. Yeah.
okay? You have the cartridge size,
Right.
okay? And then you have how much pressure that operates under when it's fired. So a cartridge, the two cartridges here don't vary very much in size, okay?
Yeah.
But one is designed to operate at much higher pressure.
So why is AR-15 such a controversial weapon?
Well, it's a very popular gun. It looks, I mean, it's a military looking gun. It's scary. I mean, quite honestly, it's scary. But it, we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little bit more when I talk about more about the guns.
Okay.
Let me talk about the blowing the lung out.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Please do.
All right. A gun. If you shoot somebody with a gun, if you point a gun at somebody, if you fire a gun at somebody, by law, that's deadly force. So, anytime you use a gun against a person or an animal, your intent is to kill that person or that animal. That's the only purpose of a gun. Guns. That's why police have tasers, and they have bullets. They have guns with rubber bullets. These are called less lethal forms of subduing people. A gun is a gun. Okay, a gun is meant to kill people. So, just like before guns, you had a sword. If somebody stabbed you with a sword, you could sever an artery, you could bleed out, or you could damage vital organs. If you drive a sword into someone's heart, they'll die almost instantly. If you drive it in their lung, they can't breathe, they die very quickly. When you shoot at an animal, a medium or large size like a deer, you're supposed to aim for the chest. It's a bigger target, and there's three vital organs right there, the heart and both lungs. To hit either one of those is the most humane way to take down a deer because they'll die very quickly. So a spear, okay, a spear was basically a stick with like a bullet on the end of it, a sharp point. It would be a stone or a piece of metal, and they throw that, and it goes into your body, and it damages vital organs, causes you to bleed out. Then a bow and arrow. An arrow is like a smaller spear, and the bow is more energy than what your arm can throw in a spear. So again, it goes into your body, vital organs. You can bleed out. You can die instantly if it's the right hit. A crossbow. Okay, they don't even call them arrows. They call them bolts. So they're like mini arrows, but a crossbow has more energy than even a compound bow. So again, goes in. So point being, the lung doesn't actually come out of your body. Okay,
That would be
but the more energy of the projectile that hits the body, the more damage it's going to do. And that's that. And one of the contradictions between when they talk about, say, military, anytime they talk about these bullets doing a lot of damage, nobody means that for hunting. Well, in hunting, you want to do a lot of damage. I mean, you want to kill the animal quickly. That's meant to be humane hunting. Plus, you don't want to chase, a wounded deer through the woods. I mean, you want to take it down right there. So I'll let you ask another question.
yeah. I'm
So the point being, does it blow the lung out? No, I think it would go through the lung. Okay. I mean, then in the next breath, they talk about the expanding bullet. So this is a 9mm. It's a hollow point. So when it goes in, it'll expand. So the bullet won't go through the body. It'll stay in the body. And, if it hits the lung, it's going to puncture and damage the lung. And you can't live very long without a lung.
right. So, with that said, earlier you were saying fire 300 rounds, 100 rounds. Now, how many rounds an AR-15 can fire consecutively?
Well, Okay, a standard capacity magazine for an AR-15 is 30 rounds. So this is a standard. This is what they come with standard.
Okay.
People will say, people on the gun control side will say that's too many. We should limit that to something like 10 rounds or 15 rounds. But I think he's getting that number because the killer in Uvalde, Texas, he had purchased nearly 300 rounds of ammo.
But he
So I think that's where he came with that number. And then when he said it the next time, he said 100 rounds.
so from someone like me that came from a culture that no one is allowed to own a gun, okay? My question will be, why would anybody need a AR-15 that holds 30 rounds if your purpose of owning a gun, well, I understand there's a Second Amendment, it's supposed to be self-defense, but the British is gone. We had this country, it is the United States now, and why does anybody need to own an AR-15 if your purpose is to hunt? I mean, how many rounds of bullet do you need to hunt a deer?
Well, why does anyone need an AR-15? See, people pause for that question. People that know guns, not necessarily because it's such a great you trapped us kind of question, but sometimes questions are just really hard to answer. It's just like it's mind blowing that anyone would ask it, because I guess the response to that is, what's wrong with an AR-15? Why do you even come to me with that? Why do you need it? I mean, you could say, why do I need a 357 Magnum? A 38 Special is enough. Why?
Well, isn't it?
Let me show you something.
Okay.
All right, so this is a 40 Smith & Wesson revolver. Okay, I mean, I could show you an AR-15, but I think this one holds 12 rounds, 10 or 12 rounds. Okay, so I fire off all 12 rounds. That's how fast I can throw in another 12 rounds. I could do it faster than that if I was trying.
Oh.
So if you're a gunman, you're shooting, boom, boom, boom. Okay, I only brought one magazine. Okay. But when you're finished, you would already have a magazine in this hand. You could have it out. You drop it out, drop the old one out, pop the new one in, and you start shooting again.
Okay.
So you could limit it to 5 rounds, but I can still change magazines awfully quick.
Okay, so, I understand that. So I guess my struggle here is because I came from a culture there's no one can own guns. So when I first came to the United States, it was pretty mind-boggling that people are allowed to have guns in their houses, right? Then I understand where the Second Amendment come from. But at the same time, my question is, clearly you're very knowledgeable with guns, and a lot of people I know, their hunts are very knowledgeable with guns, and they love guns. It's like if I collect shoes, I used to, before I had my kid, I had 200 pair of shoes. So I can understand why you would go out and say, hey, there's another gun, let me collect it. It's just like, oh, there's another pair of slippers, I will buy that. But if I go somewhere, throw 100 pair of shoes at somebody, it's not going to kill them.
Right.
But with the wrong person getting hold of a gun, and that's deadly, ultimately. And my problem is a lot of these kids, and sadly, number one, they don't have much. They don't seem to understand. Once you kill somebody, it's done. There's no coming back. That person is dead. We have
We're not talking about guns anymore now, right?
No.
We're now talking
Because
about the
guns is
kid,
causing
the mind.
Yeah, guns is causing all these problems at this point.
Are they?
So, let's say this: do you need if it's why is it Should we ban certain guns? They're too powerful.
What would happen? What would you accomplish by banning an AR? So I've seen, the meme where they list the school shooters.
Hmm.
Okay, all these school shooters that, or maybe there were other mass shooters, but AR-15, 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 and so their conclusion then is, or the message they're trying to send is, look, they're all using AR-15. So if we get rid of the AR-15s, we get rid of the shootings. Do you believe that?
I don't believe
I mean, does that make sense to
No,
anyone?
I don't believe it. I do say this. Yes,
Why? Well, let me ask you why don't you believe it? Why do you say
because
that's false thinking?
the kids went to shoot these. If you read the bio of these children, I mean, I call them kids, right? I have an 11-year-old. So
Yeah.
in 7 years, my son will be 18, and so my thing is, I feel bad for these kids that wind up shooting up a school because mentally, a lot of these kids either have this last one, he grew up his grandmother, he was bullied at school. It's like it seems like no one reach out. So he was like, okay, I'm gonna shoot it up, and it's a conversation you struggle to have with your children, right? You're like, okay, just
Yeah.
because you watch, and it's hard because every movie you go to, people are taking guns out, boom, 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 they're shooting, and then, but that's a movie. Nobody dies in
Hmm.
real, when you shoot up people in the movie. So, I mean, I think it just it's a struggle for me because I believe in the Constitution of America. That's why I'm here, and I believe that everybody have a right for self-defense, but my struggle comes is like, okay, what do you really need for self-defense? I guess we get into that. It's like, okay, it can be like a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you keep saying, "What do you need?" And I guess the logical problem with saying if your thinking is ban the AR-15, the shootings go away. There are plenty of other guns. Just because the AR-15 is a popular gun to use doesn't mean that shootings end if people can't buy an AR-15. They'll just buy another gun.
So,
So if you ban the AR-15, then what happens if they start using 9 millimeter semi-automatic? You could carry multiple handguns, 15-round magazines on each one. You go in there, shoot them off, reload. It gets too hot, you throw it down, grab another one, shoot, shoot. I mean, these are children. These schools are there's no guns in the schools. They're nobody's armed. They're children, and what we saw happen more than once now is the police wait an hour plus to even go in. So the person in there with the gun has, you know, sitting ducks. I mean, he has no resistance. He can just shoot and shoot and shoot and kill a bunch of people. And so whether he has an AR-15 or a 9 millimeter handgun, a lot of people are going to die in that scenario.
well, here's another question. So, clearly, the Constitution has been in the United States for over 200 years. Um, and people had the right in this country to own the gun for many, many years. So, this is a conversation I will have with my own husband. He said, well, when we were growing up, if you get mad at somebody, you throw a couple punches, you fight, and then you become good friends after that. But these days, you have to be careful. Somebody's going to wait for you somewhere with a gun. So why do you think that almost 300 years later, I think it started there's so many shootings. Why is all of a sudden that kids are start shooting up each other rather than just beating up each other physically?
I mean, you make a great point. So I think the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was written 235 years ago,
Okay.
and there have been guns that whole time. But this situation is relatively new. It recently happened. So what's different? The first place I ever shot a gun was in a school.
Oh,
Uh, I I went I in junior high school. The I I had friends. I knew a lot of kids that liked to hunt. I had fished my whole young life. I lived by the river. Fishing was all I did in the summer. I had an interest in hunting. I wanted to hunt, but if you didn't come from a hunting family or didn't know anybody, you could. I wanted to learn how to hunt. But so I was in ninth grade, and the announcement came out that the gun club. If you want to join the gun club, sign up. We had a gun range in the school, in the ground floor of the school. It was a 50-foot range. It wasn't a long range. It was only good for 22, long rifle. So the first time I was taught, not by teachers during school, but like a parent, like a sporting event, an extracurricular activity. We went through learning gun safety, and I was taught how to shoot. And the first time I ever fired a gun was in the school,
So wait,
and that was in probably 19. That was in 76 or
so a
77.
parent taught, and is that in Pennsylvania or somewhere else?
Yeah. Oh yeah. O'Hara Township, part of the Fox Chapel
So
School
this is
District.
not Texas and Oklahoma, the middle of the state. This
No.
the cowboy states. This is in Pennsylvania. There was a gun club in school.
In fact, one of the cool things I thought about hunters, when hunting season was on, and at the high school, you could go out in the parking lot, and there would be kids with their pickup trucks with their guns on the gun. People had gun racks right in the back. Now we hide our guns in their cars, but then they had the gun rack on the window by the window of the truck, and the guns were just in the pickup truck, hung on the gun rack. You could see them in clear as
And
day.
nobody touched it, nobody stealed it.
No.
So it is amazing that what happened in the short, what, about 30, 40 year span. So what happened? What do you think? I mean, you're American, right? You're born and raised here. I mean, what happened to this country?
Well, I mean, you're getting so. I've said before, and I'll continue to say I'm a problem solver. I believe that we have a serious problem. I believe that no child, not one single child should ever go to school and be killed. It just shouldn't happen. And the fact that it's happened multiple times, we have a huge problem. And I would do anything to solve that problem. If I believed getting rid of my AR 15 was going to solve that problem, I would be in favor of banning AR 15s. But I know that it will not solve that problem. Now, if you went the way of some countries and you banned every single gun and you confiscated, you would have to confiscate. And then after so many years of the illegal guns working their way out, you know, possibly, that would clearly put a big dent in all gun crime. But we have the Constitution, and nor would I be in favor of doing that. So, but the school shooting, we talk about, one of the problems I have is when they list how many mass shootings we've had in the country, and they classify a mass shooting as involving 3 or 4 people. So that equates when someone goes into a school and shoots 19 elementary children is equal to somebody on the streets in a drive-by shooting people over a drug deal. Those are very different situations. Okay, they're vastly different situations, and I think they each need to, they need to be approached differently. I think that there's a lot that we could do to solve the school shooting, and I think guns can be a part of that. And I even think that the pro Second Amendment side would probably take it seriously if it wasn't just guns. It's the guns. It's the guns. That's all that's being talked about.
So in this country, you have to, like, for example, I failed when I first came here. In Hong Kong, you don't have to drive. You take buses and subways. And in China and Hong Kong, in order to get a driver's license, it's a 3 months training period. You have to know a little bit of mechanical of a car. I came to this country and I studied. I was in my 20s. I got my driver's license. So you have to take a written test. You have to take a driver test, and I'm ashamed to say I failed 5 times on my written test. Five
Five.
times. And I'm not a dumb person. I can pass life insurance test Series 7, Series 6, but I failed the driver's test. It didn't make sense to me. I failed the driving test one time, and the second time I got it. So I went through a lot to get a driver's license. And then I went through a lot to become a citizen. So in this case, my thought is when you handle such a deadly weapon, shouldn't you be educated, classes, training, to get a permit versus you can just say, hey, I'm Sherry. I have never handled a gun before. I don't know anything about guns, but I'm gonna get a gun permit and go purchase one with no knowledge or no training. Shouldn't, if there is if you're legally you can get a gun, should that be training involved? So many hours of classes, so many safety classes in order for someone to purchase a gun.
Are you saying at the federal level that should be mandated?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Well, it's not.
No, it's not.
And the Second Amendment prohibits it. But there are some states that require you to. I mean, Illinois comes to mind. They have what they call a firearms owner's license, an FOL. So it's similar to driving a car. Before you can buy a gun and possess a gun, you have to go through a process. I'm not familiar with what it is, but you have to pay money, you have to take training, and you have to be approved and licensed just to buy a gun. Pennsylvania, you can carry open. So that's why you see, like the groups that gather to protest and they have their guns open in public. That's not illegal. That's why the police can't do anything about it, and they don't seem
Well,
concerned with it. It's not against
well,
the
they're
law.
not shooting up anybody up, so they're just carrying. They're not
Right.
shooting people. That's one thing.
But to carry concealed, so to hide it on your person or to have a loaded gun in your car, you need a concealed carry permit. Pennsylvania is a constitutional shall issue state. And what that means is by, I think it's in the state constitution. If you request a concealed carry permit, they have to give it to
Wait,
you.
let me get this.
They
Let
have
me
to
get this
prove
straight.
the burden of proof. The burden of proof is on them to show that you have a felony arrest record or some other, I don't know. There's certain mental health maybe things, but there has to be some disqualifying event. So if you fill out the form, and I think it's $20, you pay your $20, they have to give that
So
to
let
you.
me get this
They
straight. If
can't
I
deny it. No human being, no matter how powerful they are in government, can look at Sherry and go, I don't think she should have a gun. I'm not going to give her a permit. No one can do
so
that. It's your
this is
right.
what I'm. This is a struggle I have, right? So I believe in the Constitution. I think there's a reason for it, but the British is gone, right? And we do have a police force now, and we do live in somewhere close. It's a more complicated world today. We're not fighting anybody. In case the Russians not coming here, we don't know yet, but so far they're not coming here. So my question is, so let me just get this straight what you said. You can open carry, it's okay.
In
But
Pennsylvania,
if you need to conceal your weapon, you need a permit. So
yeah.
okay, if I have a gun, I can carry it and I don't need a permit at all. But if I want to hide it,
If it's visible, you don't need a permit. Now you can't be within 150 yards of a school. You can't go into like a courthouse. You can go to any private business establishment, even if they have a sign that says no
so
gun.
this is where I would say, if I go and try to get a permit, say I pay my $20, right? And if they said, "Oh, are you an immigrant?" I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I am." "Are you from China?" "Sure." I wouldn't mind if they said, "You know what? We may not have. Do you ever own a gun? Have you ever operated? If you haven't, maybe it's not a good idea for you to have this." I wouldn't be offended personally, but I understand where you're coming from. I think that's a struggle here that I have, even though I like the Constitution, I believe it. But in this particular incident, I just feel like people need to be more educated on guns in general.
The important thing to know in all of this is there is the constitutional amendment,
Right.
okay, the Second Amendment. Carrying, the right to keep and bear arms is right up there with free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble. I mean, it's that kind of a right. So, you hear one of the things you hear is it's the NRA's fault. The NRA is a powerful lobby, and it's because of them that we're stuck with these guns. That's really not true. I mean, the NRA is really, I think, in the last couple years, almost went bankrupt.
I've heard about that.
The gun control lobby, there is probably more money behind the people that want to control guns and ban guns. There's a lot of money and a lot of powerful people and lobbyists on that side. The problem is not the powerful gun lobby. The problem is the Constitution. That's the reason they can't do what they want to do, is because it has to go through, the Supreme Court, and it has to meet the Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court has allowed the states quite a bit of latitude, and in even some cases, city areas, quite a bit of latitude, and actually infringing on people's rights in the interest of safety. One of the things, and I'm not a legal guy, but one of the things I see that the court does is they'll say, okay, we're going to allow a little bit of infringement if it has a huge benefit. If it's a little more than a little bit, then it has to be temporary, like the lockdowns and things like that. So so the Supreme Court, I don't know the exact legal technical things, but they do allow states and in some cases city areas to regulate guns more so. Like you can't go into New York City necessarily. I think you're almost impossible to get a carry permit in New York
Well,
City.
the struggle here is, I grew up in China. You understand the Communism Party, the reason they won is because they organized a militia, gave everybody guns, and the militia is the reason they organized enough to beat the nationalists out and chase them to Taiwan and took the country in 1949. So after the Communism Party took the country, they told everybody, you don't need guns anymore, give the guns back to the government. They confiscated, they gave the guns back. Then after that, overnight, you no longer can own your private property. So I completely understand the reason you need to own a gun, and because part of it is to make sure the totalitarian government doesn't come to your property. But at the same time, I feel that maybe at 18, especially today, maybe someone needs to be mature enough to own a gun or have enough knowledge or even have more respect to human life. What happened to the respect to human life? Because people they're out to revenge, they're out to get their way. And I understand what you said about gun is just a weapon, it's a delivery mechanism, right? Gun doesn't get out and walk and decide to randomly shoot people. But there's got to be a respect to human life. So I personally think that would be a problem, and I wouldn't be opposed to say, let's make sure these, and even start up, I think gun club is great in schools, teaching the kids how to, more about the safety and all that stuff. Why did that go away? So in 1976, you had
Well,
the gun club. Why did that
see,
go away?
I honestly don't know why they banned them, but I would personally say, okay, so at this point, I have friends, okay? I've had friends tell me, so what do you think? What do you think about raising the age? Okay? Just between you and I, okay? I'm willing to have that conversation. But let's look at what happened in Uvalde. Number one, okay? That 18-year-old was known to be violent. He had a violent history, and it was, I think he had even threatened to do school shootings before. So there was a known history there. Now, I am not, you know, I'm not a, I, I'm guarded about red flag laws. Red flag laws are where people report you, and that takes away your constitutional right to own a gun. That's really can be misused. Okay, so if let's say you're married to a woman, you have a falling out, um, she can report you, say things about you that aren't true, and have your guns taken away from you. So red flag laws, but maybe it's age, inappropriate. But at any rate, let's just say there was a known history there. Okay, that to me, red flags are not a magic bullet. They have to be very careful and very sparing how you do it. Number two, 75 minutes. Okay, police were outside 75 minutes while he was inside there
That's
shooting
very
kids.
baffling.
Now,
That's extremely angry and baffling to me. What happened?
there's a video of a mother. She had two children in two different grades in the school. She ran to police, said, "You have to do," she was distraught, "You have to do something." They handcuffed her. She said, "If you're not going to do anything, I'm going in." They
Hmm.
handcuffed her. Okay? Whatever she did, maybe she calmed down. She convinced them to take the handcuffs off. She got away. She ran into the school while gunshots were firing, went to the classroom of her first
Hmm.
child, pounding on the door. The teacher saw who it was, knew her, gave her her child. She then took her child to the next classroom, gunfire still going off. Okay. I think there may have been some police in there hiding, or they were trying to stop her. She made it to the next classroom. The second teacher didn't want to open the door. She made a fuss about it, screamed, pound on the door. Finally, the second teacher relented and gave her her other child. She then ran from the school with both of her children, and there's video of her running, between the cars with a child in each arm, got them out of the school while there's still a bunch of children in there with gunfire going on. And the police wouldn't go in. So there's something, and someone released some of the training procedures of the police. They weren't following their procedures in the training. They're to respond quickly. They're to run to the gunfire. I mean, think about it logically. You know, if you hear gunfire, you know where the shooter is. Go to the gunfire. Now they claim there was conflicting reports that he was locked up in a room or this and that. Well, go in there. So 75 minutes they waited before they went in. You have someone in there shooting children. 75 minutes. That just baffles me. I mean, these are men, okay? Law enforcement men, sworn to duty. And they hear the guns going off, and they know with every gunshot they hear, that could be another child dead. And they didn't go in. I
Uh,
mean,
Are they going to
blows
do
me away.
investigation on this?
I hope so. I
I would
hope
think
so.
that if that was my child in the school, as much as both me and my husband are scared of guns, I think we will go in to save our kid. Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you're a grandfather. I'm sure you and your
Yeah,
wife will run in.
I would have
Yeah,
granted in a minute.
yeah. That's baffling.
So,
And now, is this kid
num-
like? Is he a Caucasian? Is he like
I think he's
Hispanic?
Hispanic.
Do you think the police may have
Yeah,
been worried that if something happened to this child, there'll be some kind of racial thing
I don't
happening?
know.
But 75 minutes is a
I
very
don't know.
long time.
Let me do number three.
Okay.
Number three, the school had security doors. These doors are supposed to be locked. The one door was propped open. I don't know. I mean, initially I heard a teacher did it. I'm not sure they know who did it, but the door, a secure door, was propped open. That's where the gunman went in. So my son worked armored car. He was disciplined one time. There was some incident that caused him to want to look at the videotapes from in his car. He had stepped out of the car to talk to the guy, the driver, and he got back in. He didn't close the door. The first rule when you step out of an armored car, you have to close that door before you do anything. He didn't. He didn't walk far away. He just kind of talked to the guy behind and got back in. They disciplined him for leaving that door open. So this is a secure
Right.
door. I mean, this is what's supposed to stop shooters from getting in. What
Well,
happened? And then number
mhm.
4, we can talk about
Yeah.
guns. Okay? Not the bad bullet, or the this or that, but really a discussion about, like you were saying, should an 18-year-old, because I believe that the difference between then and now is gun culture, for one. And when I hear the word gun culture, I know what they intend it to mean, people that like guns and own guns. But if you go to YouTube, there are a lot of gun enthusiasts on YouTube. You look, they're on TV. You never see these people glorifying violence. You never see them, advocating killing people or showing images of killing people. It's all technical. It's all, let me review this gun. Here's how you shoot. Here's how you improve your skills. Gun culture to me is Hollywood, video games. Okay, it's this just saturated everything. Everywhere you go, you have a problem. You take a gun and you kill people, and you're a macho hero. I mean, so you have that, and you have, young brains. We know that the human brain isn't fully developed till 25. Can't think through, the consequences or the risk of an action. And I mean, quite frankly, there's an incentive here. I mean, we have security on banks because there's money there, and we know that people want to steal that money because that's a reward. If I can get that money, that's going to benefit me. People are doing this in schools because they have a perceived benefit. It benefits them in some way. That's why they're doing it. Because we say, how could anyone kill children like that? They're getting a
Well, but
benefit
the
out of
people
it.
that killing children, they're children themselves. They're kids themselves. These are 18.
They
I
are.
remember when the
Most of them,
Columbine
yeah.
shooting came out, it was the movie Matrix came out, right? They walked in with their trench coat, just like the people in Matrix. But the whole thing is, do they understand is very final. Uh, maybe when they go and they don't have the right mind, this is not a video game, this is not a movie, nothing to glorify about it, and their life changed themselves. And
I, I I don't believe that the brain, until they're like 25, can really comprehend that idea of finality. But I think the incentive for these people is the fame. Whatever pain they're feeling, whatever marginalization, bullying, and all this other stuff that we hear, they're not getting enough attention. You go into a school and you shoot people, and everybody wants to read your manifesto. Everybody wants to talk about why, and they want to hear about your bullying. They want to hear about all the struggles. And so you get the entire country and even the world hearing your pain. They want to hear, they want to know. And that's the reward I think they're getting for doing this stuff. And we showed it to them with Columbine. Columbine, it was months later, and we were still talking about why they did it, and the things that happened to them, and how they must have been feeling, and how they were treated, and things like that.
so the reason for us to do this show is not to have some kind of answer, is to start a dialogue. There's a reason for both sides. There's a Second Amendment side to self-defense, protect your property, but only do that with the guns and not. So I believe this conversation should be had between parents and their children. You know, we experience with our son the amount of YouTube video that's out there. You can try to limit all you want. They're watching it. So don't be afraid to have a conversation with them as young as 11. He knows way more than we know when we're 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And is sad. It makes me sad to have to talk to him about this type of things. But at the same time, it's a conversation that must be have. Um, it's very difficult, but it needs to be discussed and talked about. I think more people should talk about it.
Well, I think our government failed us. Has failed us. I mean, the gun debate is politically
Right.
helpful.
but
to
not really
both
human
parties.
helpful.
Making it all about guns
Right,
energizes the base
right.
of both parties.
It's not solving
So
any
when we
problems.
just went
It's
through,
not solving any problems.
look at what, regardless of your feelings about what was right and what was wrong, look what our government did during COVID. Within a matter of months, they developed a protocol, a procedure for all the school district. We have, I don't know how many schools we have in our country, but for every single school in our country had to follow these guidelines, had to do these things to control COVID and put, I don't know what the number is, but a huge sum of money put out there to say, you have to do all these things, and here's all the money that you're going to need to do it. And we did that in a matter of months, and those schools complied. Why don't we have that on a nationwide basis from the federal government about school security, about training school staff? You don't have to necessarily. I mean, okay, we have that issue. Should there be armed people in the school? Should there not? I mean, we should have that conversation. But there are things that unarmed people can do to survive an active shooter situation. We're going to have a guest on here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, that can
Right.
talk about these things. There are very practical things that you can do. He actually trains schools in this
Okay.
area,
Yes.
and yeah, I won't tell his story, but so to me, it's like, okay, I just gave you 4 things. All right, if I'm a problem solver, I get myself a group of people together and we start investigating. We get security experts in, we get gun experts in, we get constitutional law experts in. We meet and we say, we're committed to solving the problem. We're not going to use the problem to win elections. We're not going to use the problem to gain viewership of our media channel. We are going to solve the problem. I mean, we should see an approach like we did with COVID. And, guns is on there. Some ideas about how to, the age of certain guns. I mean, in Pennsylvania, you have to be 21 to buy a handgun. You can buy a long gun at 18.
Okay.
Maybe maybe something like an AR-15 moves into the 21 range. Maybe 21's not enough. Maybe there is a red flag law for the younger ages. Maybe there's a lot of things that can be done. I mean, I know Second Amendment gun people are hearing me say this. They're like, oh no, you can't do it. I mean, there's people out there that are doing it, but here's the reality. There's a study: 40% of people. There 30-some% of Americans own guns. 40% of some live in a home that have guns. So of the 68% of Americans that don't own guns, over half of them say they would like to have the ability to own one someday. So you're upwards of 70% of Americans that say, I either own a gun or I would like to have the option of owning a gun at some point in the future. So, I mean, I think that's why you hear all these things they want to talk about. 9mm are too powerful and expanding bullets are too powerful. Expanding bullets are for hunting. Okay? But everything they say, they want to take away guns. Here, this type of gun, this type of gun, this type of gun. But then they say, nobody's talking about taking away your guns. They have to say that because they know that if the truth came out and the people that aren't paying attention to all the individual conversations realize they want to stop you from getting guns, or they want to severely impede your ability, a type of gun that you can own, that would go against 70% of the public. This is all political, I'm sorry to say. And in the media side, it's about views and clicks. And that's the frustrating thing for me. If you want to talk to me, a pro-Second Amendment guy, about gun control, like I said, you were on the right track. I was on the same track. If someone says to me, what do you think, Bob, about 18-year-old blah, blah, blah? I go, I think we need to have a conversation about all the things that we're going to do. If all you're going to do is change the age of buying guns, I don't think you're going to solve anything. So I don't really want to have that conversation. But if that's part of a conversation for all these practical measures that we can take, I mean, right now, people see value in killing children. It's a selfish, personal gain that they see, but it's just like a bank and a money. I have another friend who said it's a shame that we have to have security. We got to get back to a time where there's no security in schools. That's
No.
never going to happen. Are we ever going to go back to a time where banks don't have to have security or valuable goods? No, it's always going to be there. The value is there. The cat's out of the bag. I mean, it's a problem that's just not going to go
I
away
believe
on
there
its
should be
own.
more security in the schools. And
What's more valuable than our
nothing,
children?
nothing else. So, all right. I think this is a great conversation. We're going to leave it up to the viewers and see what happens. But, we got to end it here.
So that's my opinion. I mean, even if you don't agree with me on points, this and that, to me, it's a way of thinking about it. Let's think about solving the problem and stop being singularly focused on issues just because you know that's what's going to energize your
Exactly. I think
base.
take the politics out of it. Let's look at the human life. Let's look what really affects
Yep.
people.